what has happened in the last 72 or maybe more than that. We had the funeral procession of Iranian supreme leader. He was assassinated in the initial days of the war, February 28th, when the war started. He was assassinated together with his commander and his family members. And then finally they had the time to to get all to start the funeral. And so far, the first day was the foreign officials coming to Iran, and then the second day was Iranian people coming out. Then they went to the city of Qom, then to Karbala, and to which is so important in Shia faith, is one of the most important thing. And the Imam Hussein and his story and his reality was one of the most moving element in Shia Muslim. Then after, when they were there in Iraq, the attack from the United States on Iran is happening. And they get back to yesterday, it was in Mashhad. It was something like 7 to 10 million people participating yesterday. So this is the government that was supposed to collapse on February 28th, or in 4 days. And you see more than 40 plus people participated. The estimation is that the 40 plus million people participated in the funeral procession of the supreme leader of Iran. This is something new for Iranian people as a nation. Uh, how did you find the funeral and its implication for the ongoing conflict between Iran and the United States?
It was something special and something unprecedented for the whole world, not just for the Iranian people, as you said. We have never seen a funeral, anything approaching the sort of mass participation that we've seen over the last days in Iran. Nothing. It is very striking. It was also extraordinarily well managed. I mean, a complicated ceremonies going from one place to another, and all of that went extremely well. And the only, if you like, only change was necessitated by using a helicopter in the last element because the Americans had broken a bridge. So, what are we talking about? I think what we are seeing is something that will be striking throughout the region. It is both an assertion of Iran's soft power. And when I say power, I don't mean state power. I mean the power of a civilization. And when I'm talking about a civilization, I'm not talking about just the Shia civilization, but I'm talking about, if you like, the whole uh, Islamic philosophy from dating back to the last century when there was a renaissance at the end of the 19th century, but which actually never really succeeded. And what you had here was, if you like, something that transcended. It was about the Islamic civilization and its achievements and its strengths. And so I haven't used the power because it wasn't about military force or economic force. It was the sheer force of people expressing their will in a very powerful way. And so that was really important. And it has made an impact, I believe, on, if you like, reigniting the sense of an ummah, which has rather fallen to one side because of the sectarianism that has been encouraged and stimulated by the West in the region. But it always existed. I mean, through to the sort of Ottoman period, I mean, there was the sense of the Ummah. And as I say, that has fallen to one side. But I think the demonstration, the people. I mean, and look at what happened in Iraq. It wasn't just the Shia that attended, it was the Sunnis that came and paid respects. And of course, you had a huge level of official participation in these ceremonies, including the former president of Russia and many others that took place. And of course, it was not really covered very much in the West because the West understands that this was a rebuke to the West and a rebuke to Trump in particular, who together with Netanyahu, conspired in the murder of the supreme leader. So it's had a profound effect that transcends mere politics, that transcends just raw power, and is a reflection of human, palpable human energy and force. I only experienced in a small amount of this once before. Paradoxically, you might say, I was invited to stay at the Imam Hussein mosque in Kabul. And so I really saw, as the people, all of them, children and young and old and everyone was circling that shrine, touching it. The actual sense of energy, of determination and force was palpable. And I think you're seeing the same thing taking place today on a much, much bigger scale, of course. Yes, millions came on to Kabul, but this is still exceeds all of this. So the question really comes, it seems to me, what is Iran to make of this? And where is it going to take them? And how are they going to take it forward? And I think that is, the skeleton has been shown. The skeleton is there for a huge change, for a sort of leap forward in civilizational terms for Iran. But it has to find also the way in which they can bring forward, if you like, the values, the ethos, the morality of the revolution to today, to here in 2026, for young Iranians, 18 and their early 20s, who love their designer clothes and smartphones and all the gimmicks of contemporary world today. There's nothing wrong with that. But how do you bring those values into the modern period, into the contemporary period? Not modern, I would say, but the contemporary period. So I think that is where we have to watch, and I think the foundations for it are clearly there, because you see the greatest enthusiasm, the most fervor is coming from the young. But what they don't want is to be walked back into, somnolence and complacency and everything. They don't want whoever leads them, the government, to walk them back to sort of crass materialism and the values of the West. They want to move, I believe, to a new revolution, a revolution that is underpinned by the original values, and because Iran is well placed to do this, because this is something that everyone is looking now for, the sense of, even in the West, how do we get beyond the sort of downward pulling nihilism that has overtaken us, the crass materialism, the complete trashing of values, the sense of corruption that exists in all Western societies and beyond. And how do we, move it forward, especially since there are no political parties who answer to any of these needs at all. Tweedledum or Tweedledee, one would give a little more tax, one would take more tax away. I mean, that doesn't answer any questions at all. So I think we want, so in many ways we'll be looking, and it also sort of takes Iran back not only to the revolution and to the prophet, but before that, Iran has a long heritage, which is about light, about the idea of bringing light and darkness into the darkness, and about, if you like, the polar play between upward, if you like, upward forces bringing us to the light and downward forces. This is not good and evil. This is not, Manichaeism. This is something different. It is about an interplay of light and shadow and darkness that existed and has been incorporated into Iranian civilization too. So all of that, I think, is going to, Iran has a chance to give a lead in this way, but it needs a leader, a real leader who is capable of transcending the banality of politics of today and yesterday and the monetary needs of everyone, real though they may be, and just find the way to rise above. So that's what I would say, Nima. It's rather, I've taken a lot of time to say it, but anyway,
Yeah.
that's what it meant, I think. That's what it offers too. Let's not just think of it as an event that has happened and that we can just put it back on the shelf and then get on with other things. I suggest that it's very important that it isn't put back on the shelf and that it is built on, but built on in a way that is, about going back to the archetypal values of Iran and of Shia Islam, of course, but also the idea of the Ummah and the, if you like, Islamic revolution.
Yeah. What was happening when all the people, all the, basically the officials of the Iranian government were in Iraq with the funeral procession happening there? Then you see the United States attacking the southern part of Iran because of the, on Tuesday, there were 5 tankers belonging to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and UAE trying to pass through the Strait of Hormuz using the southern part of the strait. Then Iranian attacking them. Then the United States intensifying the attacks. We haven't seen that sort of attack since the signing of the MOU. They intensified the attacks on the Tuesday night. Then Iran retaliated. Then the United States attacked again on Wednesday night. And you see some sort of intensification in the way that the United States tried to attack. And they hit, as you mentioned, one of the bridges was hit between Tehran and Mashhad, and which was important because of the funeral yesterday. Many people wanted to get Mashhad and they didn't have the access because of that bridge. Then another bridge was hit in the northern part of Iran, as in the region called Aqala, which is in the Golestan province. And that bridge, importance of that is the railway that goes from Iran to Kazakhstan, and the China passes over that bridge. This is the situation between Iran and the United States, and the main problem still is the Strait of Hormuz and the way that the United States is trying to use the Strait of Hormuz without, coordination with the Iranian side. What is that game, and how do you see the conflict, the escalation between the two sides as time goes by?
It was, characteristic Trump deceit. He thought he could do a quick operation, that all the Iranians were heavily focused on the ceremonies, these very complicated ceremonies, that attention span was limited, that it was focused on the ceremonies. So he thought that as the ceremonies was going on, he would try a quick operation, a coordinated one by the US Navy. They'd lined up these various tankers and ships to do a quick run through the Omani side of the Straits, in order to be able to say, we've opened Hormuz, it's now open, the American corridor is working, it's worked. And he thought he was trying to be cute, to put it bluntly. He thought this was a cute operation, and that by the end of the weekend, he would be saying, look, we've done it, I've opened Hormuz, and that now all the traffic is going to go through, and then was really angered because that actually, I don't think it was the IRGC so much, I think it was the Iranian army then actually took action against these ships, either fired missiles, give them warnings, or in the case of the Qatari liquefied gas, I believe it actually went on fire. I think there were 4, maybe even 5 vessels that didn't make it through after having been warned off, first warned, and then if they didn't obey the warning, then they were fired on. However, I mean, let's be very clear. Iran has made this absolutely plain, explicit. It is said, I don't know how many times, that if anyone defies the Iranian control over the passage through Hormuz, they will not be safe. It will not be a safe thing to do, and they may come under attack. And they are advised to coordinate with Iran and to pursue passage through the Iranian safe corridor. Well, then, of course, Vance came in, and it actually gives a lot away, because what he said was, and I think he said this on that evening, he said, look, listen, he said, what we're all about, I mean, it's opening Hormuz. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, let the Iranians understand, if Hormuz is shut, we will continue to attack you. In other words, if there are more incidents of vessels being stopped to use, the American passage, unfortunately, Oman, I think, has been put under huge pressure to go along with us and to say, yes, there is a passage through close to into the littoral waters of Oman, but they've been under a lot of pressure. So what that's done is to confirm something that's very important about where we are and what was doing. I mean, Vance was basically, and he then said it in another statement, more or less. He said, look, actually, all we were about, I mean, this whole exercise was about getting Hormuz open. That's what this exercise was about. And then we'd see what cards were left afterwards. In other words, the MOU was simply, and I don't call it really an MOU because it was more of a sort of, in fact, it was a sort of de-escalation framework. Then it had no understandings in it. It was not any more than that. It was a framework that for putting into place a ceasefire from which, discussions could evolve. And anyway, so it was pretty clear then that what the Americans were playing, Iran was being played. The whole memorandum of understanding, and it was quite significantly, I mean, seemed to be follow the Iranian pattern exactly. The 10 principles that the Supreme Leader had laid down were pretty well reflected in that paper. And, a few eyebrows went up when, the Americans signed off on something that was so obviously in the Iranian influence. But then now it becomes pretty clear that this was just a play. Let's give the Iranians what, they'd like to hear, but because what we are principally concerned, only concerned with, is opening Hormuz. And so I think this is now percolated through and brought about a change in thinking amongst the Iranian leadership. And that was highlighted by the Supreme Leader when he said, look, in terms of these negotiations with the United States, I'm not totally in accord with this. But however, I've been persuaded by the Honorable President and others in the negotiating team that there is a real prospect here that Iran can obtain some political, economic advantages by pursuing this. He didn't say it in those terms, but this was the gist of it.